the upstart Sooners of Oklahoma at 12-0 and still looking for respect nationwide.
What is going on, Sooner Nation? Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of the Barry and Mack Show. As always, myself, Barry, personal trainer, sports performance coach out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. And alongside me, former Sooner wide receiver, 2000 national champ, Mr. Damian Mackey. How are we doing today, D-Mac?
Doing good, brother. Doing good. What is it? Wednesday? Hump day? Hump day. You know what I'm saying? 1-0. No respect, right? I feel like we won and went backwards in a couple of polls, and guys didn't play especially perfect, but I like their trajectory. I like preseason having a ton of stuff to coach on, and obviously there's some position groups that need to improve. Stay relatively healthy. We had another key injury that I think obviously is going to hurt the receiver room. But hey, man, excited to be in season and doing our midweek check-in, you know what I'm saying, just to talk about a little bit of the last week and then kind of project into the next week. Let's get it. Let's rock and roll, brother.
Absolutely, man. And before we get started, want to remind everybody, show is brought to you by OU Insider, partnered with Rivals.com. OU Insider, get all of your team recruiting news, all of the inside scoop of what's going on with the 25, 26 players as those classes begin to round into shape. It's looking elite again, D-Mac. And if you want the scoop on all that, go over to OUinsider.com. Also over there, D-Mac has posted 10 thoughts. I also posted upon the rewatch, which is just a thread I got going over there. But man, D-Mac, 10 thoughts is killing it. Our post.
I forgot to do the video, bro. Why you put me on blast, dog? I didn't do the video. Right. The podcast folks are gonna be pissed. I gotta do it, or should we wait till I'm gonna do it next week? Guys, I'm gonna do it next week. I'm gonna do it next week.
It was simple, man.
That was a scrimmage. That was a scrimmage.
But even in scrimmages, D-Mac, injuries happen, and that's gonna open the show today. Let's talk injuries. So Hickman at center, we will see how long it takes him to get recovered, and we'll talk about how that affects the O-line. Might be pretty significant, especially after rewatching the game. I think it's more significant than people want to let on. There's a reason why he was playing, and it wasn't Bates, and it wasn't Hatchett. We had already known about Nick Anderson, D-Mac. The hamstring issue is just, it runs in the family when it comes to the Andersons. It is Nick Hamstring Anderson. He is going to have it for a while, man. Some people just got the bug, and it just affects them. I know you've had tight hamstrings kind of your whole life, man. Just something that some people got to deal with. But the injury that is pretty impactful is Jalil Farouk.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be 6 to 8 weeks. And I also don't want to gloss over, because we didn't talk about it at length, is Dasan McCullough. We will see how long. It was an ankle sprain, we believe, right? Based on that, 3 to 6 weeks, anywhere in that range. Depends on how much they need him, I think, as he gets towards the end of that. If they need him significantly, and if Dolby just isn't a fit for what they're playing against, maybe he rolls out there a little bit sooner. But with Andrell Anthony maybe being a step behind, with the loss of Jaden Gibson for the full season, this Farouk loss, it's a pretty big hit. He opened the game with a big reception, and I think him and Jackson had some chemistry at times. Yep. Farouk, say what you want about where he fit in with the talent compared to your Burks, compared to your Thompsons, compared to your Gibsons, in terms of that blue chip eliteness. He still was a good player, right? He was more than a Jag. He's right in between that Jag to elite kind of guy, right? And he's a good route runner. He is a Swiss Army knife. You can put him in the backfield, hand him the ball. You can do a bunch of different things with him. He's an asset to your offense. Talk about the loss of him and what that means to the receiving core.
No, it's a double whammy. Losing obviously Gibson, and let's kind of digress back to our conversation, fall camp notes, when we talked about the receiver group. Then we talked about Farouk relative to his peers at that time. At that time, you're looking at an X, a Z, and an H, and you have a stalwart in Anderson on one side, and then you've got Gibson, a kid who showed he could play opposite Anderson, and then of course you had Burks to be a volume catcher, right? A slot receiver, H receiver. In that scenario, yes, Farouk is a guy who you're like, ooh, I don't know where he fits in. And then you add in Andrew coming back, and then you add in the puppies coming up, right? It's a situation where it's like, okay, like you said, Farouk is not an A plus in any of those positions, but he probably is an A minus B plus at any of them, right? So let's park that there. Now you lose Gibson, who I think was going to be the Z. Go watch the second half of last season, guys. He was playing opposite Anderson a ton. He was playing that Z position, and I'm just telling you, you watch some of the big boys play Saturday, and you see the 6'3", 6'4" guys on the outside, and at any given play, the quarterback can just say, "I'm gonna go 1v1 back shoulder fade." You got a 6'4" guy on Anderson's side, and then you got a 6'5" guy on Gibson's side, and both of those guys have heavy minutes last season. It's a big deal, right? And so you lose both of them potentially. Farouk is a guy who can come in opposite Burks and you still don't lose anything. Right? He's 6'1" or 6 foot versus a 6'4", 6'5" guy, but he's got routes, he's got hands, he's made big plays, he's a volume catcher, he's played 2-3, he's played since Caleb's, right? Since Caleb's been here. Huge loss. Huge loss. And not only is it a bad loss, it's a long-term loss. It's not a soft tissue 2 to 4 week deal. It's 6 to 8 weeks. And then you got scar tissue, and then you got rehab, and then you got to get your will up and running. It sucks. There's no easy way to say it. It sucks. I don't want to sound like revisionist theory. I just being honest about the scenario, right? You never want to lose your B plus guy. Listen, guys, I was a B plus guy. I was a 30 to 40 catch guy a year. I'm going to catch 2 to 4 tugs a year. I'm going to catch those balls on third down. Like coach knew he could depend on me, but I wasn't Antoine Savage or Mark Clayton. I wasn't. That doesn't mean I couldn't have grown into those positions as an upperclassman, but I played 2 years, and before I got injured, 2 years and 2 games. But I was a guy that they knew they could play championship football with. Farouk's a guy they knew they could play championship football with. And so losing him on top of Gibson and potentially Anderson being a nagging injury, that's a big deal. I do want to talk about a silver lining, in my opinion. But this is just my humble, and I don't even have a ton of data to back it up. It's just my feeling.
Okay.
We've recruited well in the room. One of the puppies will step up. I don't know who it is. I don't know if it's Dragons and he's a speed guy. I don't know if it's Carry On and he's another tree that we can replace. I don't know if it's Petaway in year 2 and he's more comfortable. But I do believe, I don't know if it's Kearney, right? One of the true freshmen coming in who have a high ceiling. I don't know who it is, but it does mean by virtue of addition by subtraction, more freshmen are going to be pushed up. And one of them is going to show they're not afraid of the bright lights. I don't know who it is. I just know that opportunity presents itself, and there's a high likelihood one of those guys will step into the light. They're just too talented. We've got too many talented young options. I just want to see, what does Dragons look like on the end of the round? What does Petaway look like if he runs an over route, right? He goes under the first backer, over the second backer, and across the field. I think he catches one of those and the game slows down, right? Obviously, Carry On's a guy who is a prototypical Anderson or Gibson. What happens if we throw 20 balls his way, right? How many of those does he catch, and does he know how to use his body? So I think it's a short-term issue, Barry. And again, to that silver lining, it's game 1. So there's 2 more games before they have to be ready to play against a Tennessee and then going into the October schedule.
Yeah, it's BV referenced Petaway in the presser. I don't know if you saw, it was asked, I can't remember who asked it specifically. Why didn't Petaway get more play? Apparently he's just had some issues. It seems like maybe an injury issue, and he's getting over that. So BV made it seem clear that Petaway is going to be more involved. As long as he is cleared and healthy, we will see what that looks like. Because again, I don't know if we were that high on Petaway. He had some issues last season. Really hadn't seen much of him since he's been at Oklahoma. He hasn't had those highlight plays, hadn't had the wow moments that you see from youngsters who are going to be able to really make an impact. You saw it early with Anderson. You saw it early with an Andrell. Like, as soon as a guy arrives, you're like, man, that's a guy. Jaden Gibson, when he walked out there, he wasn't perfect, but he had some moments where you're like, he can play ball. And as he progresses, let's talk about the offensive line, D-Mac, because it's probably been the most discussed unit. It does seem like you might get Troy Everett back pretty soon, and he was a player who was good last year, right? Your B minus kind of guy who
first year guy. first-year guy who a year in the program could have obviously, gotten better.
Absolutely. Right. And he's a guy who maybe even try him at center, because I will say it if nobody else will. When my guy Hickman went down, it was trouble in paradise.
Don't get me in trouble, bro. They come on, man. They be listening to this, bro. Don't be having me. I can't even go into the damn football office because you over here.
Man, it's let me just say that I wonder what Bates will look like in live action. Bates does have the size and the relative athleticism to handle most situations. I think Hickman is a more seasoned, more athletic, polished player, and I think he might have we talked about it, the center juice, right? The mental side of that your greats, or at least your really good centers who have come through Oklahoma, have had. But man, everywhere else, that they really need Taylor to get healthy. And at a certain point, with how OU looked at left and right tackle, DMAC, you're possibly talking about moving some guys around, because they've really got a couple games here in Houston and then in Tulane before you start getting into the thick of it, man. You got Tennessee, Auburn, Texas. You have got to be ready. Talk about how you feel about the offensive line. Do they need these guys back and healthy? Do you think this current group can get it together enough to play SEC championship football? Or do you think that it is just the sky is falling in Norman in Biedenbaugh's room?
Call me cynical or call me stubborn. I don't know what you call me, but like they didn't play. Okay, okay, here we go. They didn't play well. They didn't play well. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we're not gonna, I don't know, we're not gonna pin a tail on it and act like it's, it's a birthday party for a 6-year-old. They didn't play well. And it's not unlike a game one that we've ever seen. I don't know if I said that right. In other words, we've seen a game one where the O-line didn't play well. And so I think a couple of things, and I spoke to this with my 10 thoughts, and obviously on the OU Insider board, I believe, and I firmly believe this, I actually believe this, and they'll have to prove me wrong, and maybe they will. I believe we've got to shorten the rotations to 7. And I believe, just because I've been there before, Barry, I remember when we struggled on the offensive line in 01, right? 2000, we win the Natty. 2001, it seems like things are going to go well, but Bubba's gone. Howard Duncan's gone, right? So we're replacing starters and we're shuffling guys. And to be very honest, especially when Nate was at quarterback, we struggled with drop back in action. We had to really run a ton of screens and quick game because that offensive line wasn't the same as the year prior. Okay. Well, what I saw Mangino do, and what I think, or what an idea I have, a recommendation I would make is Tuesday, Wednesday practice would be game setting or game scored. Like, we watch film Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we watch film. All 4 days we watch film. Tuesday, Wednesday's full go, and blitz period, screen period, team period. There's one more. Team, blitz, screen, and down and distance. Those 4 periods in practice, they've got to just simulate game situations. And I don't want to get too much into it, but it's pretty easy to see what front Houston runs. It's pretty easy to go back and see what their 3 or 4 favorite blitzes are from 2023 season, and just periodically run those. And in practice, you rotate 10 guys on Tuesday, and then 3 of them are eliminated who scored the lowest. And then on Wednesday, you rotate the 7 or 8 top guys, and you tell them Monday, when you're watching film Monday. I don't know if they do Sunday or Monday. I know Link had switched it, but generally when I was there, we watched.
Doing it Sunday, just from what I've heard. I do think it's Sunday.
We did both. But on Sunday, let's say they watched the game film Sunday or the game film Monday, whichever the case may be. You tell everybody, hey guys, this is how they did at receiver for us. This week, whoever practices the best Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is starting Saturday, right? And so you do all of the rotations Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, right? Tuesday, Wednesday is very physical. Thursday's more mental. You're throwing blitzes at them. You're throwing a bunch of stuff at them. See who can mentally do what they need to do. Friday's the walkthrough. Saturday, I don't want to see 11 guys in the first 2 quarters. I don't want to see 11 guys.
Yeah.
I want to see 7 or 8. I want to see 3 guards, competing for 2 positions, and I want to see 3 tackles competing for 2 positions. And tackles a little more side regulated, right? So you got right tackles and left. So maybe there's 2 tackles for each position, or maybe I don't know, right? That one's there's a little bit of fluidity there, but I don't want to see 11 guys because I don't really get to make a good assessment when there's so much, disconnect. O-line needs continuity. So I anticipate, and this is just a speculation, I anticipate they play substantially better on Saturday. I think a couple of guys, and I'm not going to say any names. Anybody with eyeballs can see a couple of guys kind of like, yo, bro, you might need to, get a red shirt year in and try again next
Yep.
season.
Yep.
But I also think again, center, we've got to address it. And I don't know if it's the Hickman injury. I don't know if it's, like you said, we shuffle some guys in. We need a stout center, and you said this. So I definitely want to make sure you get credit. They got to be able to move their feet. Not only do they got to be able to hike the ball pretty consistently, they got to be able to move their feet because we're just getting our ass kicked at the snap of the ball because we're not moving our feet. That is literally priority number 1. And then from there, a lot of guys in new positions, first game jitters. I think going into Houston, we'll see that we're able to run the ball. If we can't run the ball versus Houston, now I'm going to start singing alarms for real, because we've got to be able to show that, oh, there was jitters, or, oh, we were whatever. We can't make excuses. Houston isn't 1/3 the talent that we're going to have in back-to-back weeks. And so that's going to be really important.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the tell of the season, man. I think these next 2 games are going to tell us a lot about Oklahoma. To me, Houston and Tulane are going to tell us if this is a 7-6 or if this is a 10 win team. I really do. Because there is the issue with playing in the SEC is none of these games going forward, DMAC, are gimmies. Auburn's not a gimme. Auburn is not Iowa State in most years, right? Tennessee is not Kansas in most years, right? You got Ole Miss, which would normally be kind of a mid-year game against who, like Texas Tech, right? You don't have those games where you go out there 14 to 21 points better than every roster you're going to play against. And they don't have that luxury. So you've got to be able to play football. One thing that will help the Sooners that we did not touch on that I think is a very important part of this team, and it's good that they seem to have found it. And I will say, I went back, I watched every single play, I watched every single piece of movement that this guy had, and I am not an expert in this area, but I certainly do know kind of what to see and evaluate guys and just what looks right and what doesn't. And OU's got themselves a kicker. SEC Player of the Week, and Tyler Keltner. He is Schmidt ain't getting that job back. I'm just telling you, unless there's an injury, no chance. The mobility he has, the deep positions he gets into, the ankle mobility, his ability to adduct, right, to get that foot across the midline of the body, come through, swing that thing it's a golf swing with your leg. Right. And that's what kicking the football is. It's the same kind of physics at play. It's the same kind of movement. You got to be loose but strong, which is very hard to do. It's very hard to do that and be accurate. Every single kick, DMAC, his follow through was great. The way where his body ended was perfect. His approach was perfect. I believe he had what? It was a 41, a 54, and like a 30, like a 32. It was something like that. Every kick was phenomenal. His long was really his best kick, and it would make sense, but his approach was fantastic. And I think we will see how punt goes when it matters. I do want to see OU's punt game and see what it looks like when they really need to pin somebody. We do know that Jackson Arnold, man, DMAC, you guys at OU, when Bob was there, when Coach Stoops was there in your early years, you guys really utilized the Pooch punt quite a bit. To talk about the weapon that a play like that can be if you got a quarterback or a kicker. You guys would have Tim Duncan sometimes do it, if I remember right. Talk about a weapon in that, because we didn't touch on that in the show, but just from a football standpoint, just having that in your arsenal.
Here's the biggest. I mean, number one is execution. How many times you see a quarterback or a kicker, you're acting like you're kicking a field goal, or you're acting like you're taking a, fourth down play, and they totally miss it, you know what I'm saying, and it screws you. So the execution part is critical, and Jackson did a great job with it. Here's the bigger piece, Barry, and I'm just gonna keep this short and light. It's psychological. Even though you got stopped, right? It's just a psychological win for your offense, and then a psychological addition for your defense. And so the defense, they call the play. I wouldn't say every defensive player knows, but the defensive coaches know. And so, let's say I'm a defensive player, I'm on the sideline, and I see us stay on the offense, right? Like punt team knows, hey, pump, pump protect, pump protect. They're alert, alert, alert. So the guys who are on punt team, they go to the front, and then they see the offense stay out there. They're like, oh, okay, we're going for it. Some of them may not know that we're doing a pooch. Some may know, right? But when we execute it, most of those guys on punt protector, backers, and DBs, right? And some of them are receivers, but the defense gets a jolt of energy when they see it's like, even though we did what we're supposed to do, we executed a play, and there's not going to be a deep man, right? Obviously, we want to get a coffin corner, or we want to get the ball to roll out of bounds or stop and settle within the 10 to 15-yard range. And so I just think in that possession specifically, and in other scenarios, even though it's a punt, it's like twice as good as a regular punt, right? Because generally, what do defenses want to do? Get a turnover or force you to punt. When you do a pooch punt, generally you're in plus area, so you know what I mean, you're in a position where you can really get them backed up, and it just feels good, right? That possession felt better than our other punts, if you will, what I'm saying, to kind of encapsulate it. So
the beautiful stuff. I want to touch back a little bit on the defense, especially after watching the game. Do you think, and then this is really more for the loss of Dason and maybe how he fits in, being moved to Will, with wanting to see those guys healthy, and in terms of the development of some of the young guys, do you think that this game against Temple is a testament to where this defense currently stands? Do you think they're going to have the tools going into the SEC, have the guys, have the studs at those edge positions with the coaching, right? And I throw Dason in the mix because, we'll see how they end up using him at whether it's Will, whether it's Cheetah, and seeing a guy like PJ upon the rewatch. PJ, some of the same issues that we've seen a year ago. And we'll just kind of see how that unfolds the rest of this season. But do you think OU has enough, or are they kind of like the receiving core? I guess you always are to an extent, just an injury away from being in real big trouble.
No, I think the depth there is better. I'm going to use both of your examples in an analogy here in a second. I want to say I was a little underwhelmed with Backer when I rewatched it. There was in the first quarter. If you later on in the game, they play very well. Again, I want to, I'm a Lewis Carter fan. He got beat a couple times by, post snap. He got out leveraged a couple times, and then he didn't sink deep enough once. And I know BV, he's a hard ass on that stuff. So I know he coached that up pretty good. But we didn't look clean first 2 or 3 possessions with our so-called stud star guys. I don't want to sound like an ass, but I just got to be honest. I think if you would have asked me if there's an overrated player in America, I would kind of say Danny's a little overrated. He's made big splash plays, and I'm saying this with my voice low because I don't want to sound like a hater, because I think he's a phenomenal player. But some of the things you want your All-American backer to do in terms of just the fundamentals, he's got to consistently do them. And I'm just telling you, watching the games, it's not consistent enough. And it's not a big problem, and he overcomes it with his ability to make big plays. And again, I know I'm kind of pinching, and why are you talking about this, Mackie? I watched the game again, and I'm like, these are pretty simple reads where the backer is just supposed to be on this side so that the play is killed or dead, and it's not happening enough. And so to your question, Dason, we have enough depth at backer between the three. We got 28, 10, and 11. All three of those guys have a ton of reps and a ton of opportunity. They've had a ton of opportunities and they all have played well. Kip also had some stuff. I was like, Kip, you should have cleaned that up better. Like he just sort of cleaned it up first two possessions, first three possessions. McKenzie played very well. 2020 gave me a little pause, puppy. 24 looked better than expected, in my opinion. But you talked about Dason. Dason is a guy that if we have him coming off the edge in special packages, which I know will start showing here in a couple weeks, could be dynamic. Is that injury a death knell for us? No. Is his health a value add for us? Hell yes. So that's number one. Then you brought up PJ. I forgot about PJ. But here's the crazy part. 5 years ago, we had a defense that if someone like a PJ didn't hit, we were in trouble. And so kind of to your question, because of the way we've recruited volume, competent talent. I don't know that they're championship just yet, but competent talent, guys who could competently compete and take your spot. And if you don't bring it every day in practice, you could potentially be sitting on the bench. We don't necessarily need a PJ who is a project to be perfect this season. Because here's the deal: you can't erase his natural God-given talent. It's there. So one day, if that light bulb goes off, he could go from a guy who gets 8 snaps a game, unless we're blowing somebody out, to a guy his third year in the program who's unblockable. So you still want to keep those guys readily and available, improving. You talked about it earlier, and obviously it's something that I've been discussing since BV came, and those are just program guys. He's going to stay in the program, and after a certain amount of time, the position he's playing, we expect him to be able to understand what he's supposed to do, his assignments to slow down, and his talent to take over. So backer position, I actually think Dason brings something the other guys don't. At the defensive line position, there's enough talent in the room. PJ can sit for 2 years, then hopefully year 3 or year 4 or year 5, he's a guy who can, be an ass kicker or a dude.
Before we move on to some of these questions from the OU Insider members that I want to hit that were asked of us, I do want to let everybody know, if you guys aren't on X, go and follow us. DMac is at D_Mac13. Find me at BWise Fitness, at letter BWISE Fitness. The official stake bet this year is the over-under on Peyton Bowen punt return.
Oh, you're gonna lose, bro. You're gonna lose.
Oh no, D-Mac. So here's what he needs to get 2 early in the year. Well, what did we say? 3 or 3.5?
3. He's gotta have 3.
It can't be okay.
Yeah, I'm not gonna make you do 4. You said 3, and I said no, he's not. 3. So there it is. So if he does 2, you lose. He does. Dang, if he does 3, you win, huh? Okay, I'll give it to you. If he does 3, you win.
Okay.
I should have did 3.
I didn't know if it was a push or how we were going. Okay. All right.
If he does 3, you win. I'll give it to you.
But fair enough. He showed some promise. There were a few plays where you can see some of the stuff. I don't think he had a ton of opportunity in that game. It just didn't really bear itself out. But I want to go to some of these questions on OU Insider, DMac. The fantastic folks over at the board, had a few of these questions for us. You already touched on one that was on there, which is a pretty common question that had been asked this offseason. Some of the differences between Latrell and Levy's scheme. Give us the cliffs on what you saw after the first game, with what the key differences are in terms of what Levy tried to do and in terms of what Latrell is trying to do. Well, what are some of the big style differences in that case?
Don't give me in trouble. Here's how I'll say it. I didn't see enough. That's what I'll say. Stylistically, there were some things. Number one, we played at 2 levels at the tight end position, like early in the game, which again, we literally never did it until like week 8 last year. Pisses me off. No sniffer. Please tell me why. We saw the tight end leading up through the hole a couple times in the game 1 game. So stylistically there. I saw Seth try to attack the center of the field much more in terms of play design.
That's a great
the,
point.
the first touchdown or the first touchdown to Burks is a play we'd never see with Levy, unless Levy was trying to cook something up like on the fly, right? Levy did have, by the way,
That would
he
have
did.
been a cook up play. You're
Yeah,
totally right.
Levy's a guy who could cook something up, but it's not a gimmick. It's just not a part of the scheme. And the way we were running our flow route, it was a beautiful changeup to see them the running back run a circle, the tight end clear it out, and then the slot receiver come behind it, high load the middle backer. That's something we would never see with Levy that we're showing week one. That lets you know that's just a part of the offense versus something he's cooking up trying to make a big play. Beautiful. I like that we tried to move Jackson in the pocket more. That was not. It used to drive me crazy when we do that sprint out. Like I don't hate sprint outs per se, but sprint outs eliminate half the field. And so I like the fact that we gave Jackson an opportunity to more so be in an action type situation versus just a pure sprint out.
Yeah.
But I just here I am reaching, right? My hands are like reaching over my head. I want to see more. I did see us run a little power football Q4, which tells me we have it. And obviously the guys, by the way, we ran better when we ran some power concepts, and not really power, but really just true zone, man on man, move your feet, let the running back find the lane and cut. Tatum had a couple of good runs with that. By the way, Barnes had a pretty good run with that. It was a bend back, the one he has where I think he should have scored. He kind of gets tripped up. So you see those concepts early. I know there's going to be action off of it. I know there's going to be reverse action off of it. I know there's going to be give the ball back stuff off of it. Though that's how you build a game plan that you don't have to teach your people in 1 week how to do something totally different. They just got to add one thing. And that's how you build a scheme that has depth to it. So that part, I was like, okay, that's what made me believe. And by the way, I got flack. People threw some. I got the subs. People threw the subs at me. That a lot of people were like, "Oh, OU is just working on stuff," and because that's what I said. Like, sometimes these week 1, week 2 games, we're indifferential to the opponent. We're just running stuff to see how good we do. I know for a fact we do that, but people threw it at me like, "Oh yeah, right. We were just running stuff." That's what makes me believe that we were just running stuff. We could have ran zone read all night with Jackson or with Hawk and killed them. But I feel like coach wanted to see what guys would do in bad scenarios. Go back and watch the film. If we simply run zone read and zone read action, by the way, the drop that Hester has, I believe it's zone read action. The quarterback kept it and threw the slant. It's action pass. It looks exactly like action pass. It's a bang 8 slant. Quarterback shows the ball, pulls it back, throws it. Hester down drops it, rocking my number. So we have that stuff in the bag. If the game was close, we could have easily run more of that stuff. I think coach was being stubborn, wanted to see what I honestly believe the light was on the O-line and everybody was watching like, what can these mofos do? And putting them in adversarial scenarios to see if they could, handle it, because the game was never in question. The offensive tempo was anemic. So looking at Seth's bag, he showed more versatility than Levy did in half a season Saturday, but I want to see us cook. I wouldn't mind if in Houston, and this is what Link was good at. Link will say, hey, Murray's good at this. We're going to run the offense like this. Hurts is good at that. We're going to run the offense like that. So it'll be cool to see if this week Seth says, hey, Jackson, what's your 4 favorite runs? What's your 4 favorite passes? Let's just cook in some plays, some plays that we know you enjoy and that the scheme says are going to be relatively successful. I'd like to see that to have some success versus really trying to see which old lineman can cut it 1v1, because there was a lot of 1v1s and we was losing a lot of 1v1s.
The quite a few. Man, I want to circle back before we could kind of move on and close things out today. The Dolby interception.
Oh,
the rewatch on, or the tip that was the Dolby interception, that was just fantastic football. If you go back, and I encourage fans to watch the play, first of all, this is the type of stuff I think you get with a defensive coordinator like Allie, who has a chance to really coach things up. The Dolby tip was far more of a high IQ play than it seemed in the beginning at first glance. It wasn't a just right spot at the right time. It was really good football.
For sure.
They set it up from the blitz earlier, right? Where Dolby's kind of feinting the blitz. He ends up getting the pressure and getting home. But the play, Jalil Farouk is lined up over the 3. He bails at the snap.
Whoa, not Jalil Farouk.
Or
Not Farouk.
not 3, RSJ. I had
Yeah,
three
yeah,
in my head. RSJ, thank you. I almost my Jaron Jackson moment.
yeah.
RSJ bails at the snap. Kanai is sinking on that, right? Which means what coverage are they likely in?
4. So they're in 4.
Cover 4. Okay.
Corners are squatting, looking at eyeballs in the backfield. Safeties are getting the hell out of there in case someone's going deep. They're definitely in cover 4.
Perfect. And then Dolby bails out, and he has to get home to that receiver as fast as he can, because
Hooked it flat.
probably the read. The second the quarterback sees RSJ bailing, that's probably the read on that play. And Dolby gets physical. He makes contact. He wasn't fearful to make contact, tips the ball. Kanai is heads up on it because he's not thinking too much. He's not worrying. He sees the play unfold. The play is really some beautiful stuff, especially in a game against Temple. I think it's the kind of things that as players get more experience in the system, it's the kind of stuff you can do. It's the kind of thing where if you have high IQ guys, it's what you get when you have good football players, knowing where they need to be and knowing what they're supposed to do when they get there as fast as possible and wreak havoc. Another little small note, D-Mac on the rewatch, I think Jaden Jackson might have had the best game of the defensive lineman. I think so. Who else would you say?
Halton.
Halton had a very good game. I think Jaden Jackson 100% of the time, or nearly 100% of the time, impacted the play when he was in the game.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. I'll let you finish first.
Grayson had a lot of really good moments, though. I was a little underwhelmed by Woolard from what I saw in the spring game. I thought he was solid, but I was a touch underwhelmed. But we will see how that goes. And RMT, I watched a ton of him. He is explosive as he's been since being at Oklahoma. I think whatever was going on with him is good. And I listened back to our podcast, and you talked and kind of glossed over Dominic Williams. He looked pretty good too, man. He didn't have any big, huge, like shining splash moments per se, or at least a ton of them. He was just really solid. But man, OU's got some depth across that line.
Can I speak to that? Can I talk to that? Can I speak to that? So, by the way, I agree. I'm not gonna rebut, but I do want to nuance and say Jaden Jackson relative to Dominic Williams, when they were side by side, he was more disruptive. He was an extra yard in the backfield, and he was creasing the pathway of run plays, or not letting the quarterback have a proper setup in the pocket. And so I don't know if I said it on 10 Thoughts or I said it on our post pod. Jaden played well. Like, there's no question. He did what he was supposed to do, and he was plus. I think relative to Dominic, in my opinion, Jaden was more disruptive in his role. Halton was just as disruptive in his role, which was he was the 3 or the outside in, or I haven't watched it again, but he was either the 3 or.
Surprised he was at 3 tech so much? Is that kind of what you expected?
Yeah.
But
absolutely
that's what
not.
you can do in a 30.
And yeah, he was playing the outside guy too. And at both spots, he was kicking ass. Like, he was beating his man with speed, which is exactly what we discussed. But he's bigger. He's a 3rd-year guy. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just remember the year I got injured, and sorry, it is ego. We have ego, just FYI. But the year I got injured, I was like, these motherfuckers can't hold me. Like, the game felt like high school again to me. And you just have that you've put in the work. And he just looks like a guy. I just knew last year, I was told many times, like, he's this close, it's mental or whatever, right? He'll make a mistake and think about it too long. You can see a guy who says, screw it, there's a lot of competition, I better just go out there and be an athlete. And he's a guy, he's going to show up in big games because he's a guy that's going to out talent even fundamentally good linemen. And we typically haven't had like one of those guys who isn't our like main dude. So it's going to be really good to have a a bevy, or you know what I'm saying, deploy multiple assets who are not just like, oh, he knows how to do his job and he can do it. Like Halton's going to win some of those matchups against a second team all SEC guard from Auburn, and he's going to be a guy where if teams are focusing on Dominic or focusing, you know, on one of our edge rushers, people gonna have to watch out for him.
Yeah.
That's where I mean, to me, it felt
That's
like a
fair.
really good game because Jaden, I said, you know, I'm a Jaden fan, and he was in the backfield more than anybody else from the inline tackle position.
Yeah.
Halton was a guy who was disrupting and making splash plays, and then of course the puppies at the end. But I don't know what the Temple guys, you know, kind of demeanor was by the time. But strong looked strong. Sanders looked all right too. Sanders looked all right. Both of them boys, they're definitely going to be quality depth in the years to come.
A lot of good first steps. Halton's first step, man, is really, really good. And that's what we said about Sanders too when he was coming to Oklahoma. Really good first step. I think that's what they probably saw and said, man, if we can clean him up, get his body right, get the
He got
technique
bigger,
right.
bro. See how big they are? Those dudes, they got bigger. They got bigger.
That's what happens when you got a good strength program, man. When you know what to do and you know how to put size on guys and you're giving them that, you can't do that stuff in an off season. You need a 2 to 3 year runway
100%.
to put on that kind of muscle and to not lose a bunch of speed, you just can't get fat, which I think is maybe the idea sometimes is let's throw 20 pounds on a guy in an off season, man. I mean, PJ's put the weight on really well. He's hinging right on 260, which is where he needs to be, but well, you know, we'll see as things come. D-Mac, we're going to be doing a Houston pregame show as well. Might be new to the fans, but you're going to be able to see the show on OU Insiders channel as well as the Barry and Mack show channel. Make sure you are subscribed to both because on OU Insider, they're still doing great content. You got the Oklahoma drill. Parker and Brandon have their show midweek on Wednesday where it's a lot of recruiting. They are talking ball, but I will say, D-Mac, nobody's getting inside the game, talking about the players individually, about the scheme, about what we're seeing on the field, quite like what we're doing here. So make sure you're staying tuned in to the Barry and Mack show. Follow us on social media at BWise Fitness, at Dame That Dude on Instagram, and at D_Mac13. D-Mac, closing words before we get out of here today, brother.
Let's stay healthy game 2. Offensive line, move some people. Jackson cook. I want to see Jackson have 4 tugs. I want to see him cook. I want to see some receivers get nasty. I want to see a running back from OU go 60. Is that too hard to ask? Can we see that? Defensively, backers, I want it to just look clean. When they run off tackle, I want to see the play side backer, wrong shoulder it, spill it back to the Willie backer, clean it up. They try to stretch it. I want to see us beat guards, get cross face, and make the tackle at the line of scrimmage. I want to see a competent quarterback throw at the second level. To me, it just looked like there were some second level areas where there were guys open and they just mentally quarterback couldn't make the play. So I want to see if that was more so just, I don't know what it looked like to me on the TV, or if a competent quarterback could make those plays against us. I don't want to see any adversity yet. I don't want to see any adversity. That to me, we're too talented to have adversity. So I don't want to see adversity. Stay healthy. And let's get ready for Tulane revving up for the SEC schedule.
Absolutely, man. Sooner Nation, make sure you stay subscribed to the show. Follow us on X, BWise Fitness, D_Mac13, and the show at Barry and Mack SHW. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Leave us a comment, leave us a review, all of the good things that you guys have been doing. Thank you, Sooner Nation, and we will see you soon.